Check out this Dutch oven bread. Super soft, crunchy. There are some things I do differently. Let's talk about it. Right, here's some lukewarm water at 120 degrees. 1 tablespoon sugar. And 2.5 teaspoons of dry active yeast. Just stir that up to combine. Then we're going to set that aside for about 10 minutes to become active. To a large bowl, add 3 cups all-purpose flour and 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. Give it a quick mix to combine. You don't have to do this, but I had some extra herbs laying around, so I'm adding in a teaspoon or so, maybe a teaspoon and a half of fresh thyme. So add that in and stir to combine. Now here is our yeast mixture. You can see it's really bubbled up. It's nice and frothy. A lot of things have happened to it. So we're gonna dump this into our flour, salt, and thyme mixture. Here you go. We're gonna start by folding in the yeast and water into the flour, just until it starts to get combined. Then we'll get in there with our hands here in a minute. You should have a rough dough ball form. It's kind of like a shaggy dough. Okay, now that's kind of formed a little bit. We're gonna get our hands in there. The trick here is to have some water laying around, room temperature. You don't want to add any extra flour into the dough at this point, but having a wet hand will actually help your hand not stick to the dough as you begin this little folding method here. So, wet hand, and just start folding everything in. Kind of pulling from the outside to the inside. If it gets a little sticky, just kind of re-wet your hand and continue folding. What you're doing is pulling from the outside and kind of folding to the inside. Just kind of doing a gentle knead. Nothing crazy here. Just until the dough forms, kind of comes together. As you can see, it's starting to come together quite nicely here. Just gonna turn the bowl, keep on folding. And here we go. I think we're looking pretty good. Gonna fold that up into a nice ball. You can check that out. Still kind of wet, sticky, but this is a good point to stop. We're gonna cover this with a damp towel here, and we're gonna let it sit out, room temperature. Okay, so it's been about 30 minutes. We're gonna do a strengthening fold here. So we're just gonna stretch and fold each corner of the dough. We build some gluten, and then we'll do this in 30 more minutes. I got some water here, so with a wet hand is the best way to do this. You don't need to add any other flour or anything like that. So let's take a look. You can see it's already starting to double in size here. So it's doing its thing. So we're just gonna kind of pull and fold. Yeah. Pull. That's it. Fold and fold. Pretty simple. So we're going to cover it with a towel and come back in about another 30 minutes. It's been another 30 minutes, so we're doing another strength fold. Wet hand into the corner, and just do every corner. That's it. So this was my last strengthening fold here. This was about after 2 hours of continually pulling the dough every 30 or so minutes. Now you want to get a floured work surface together. So there's just a cutting board, a little bit of flour down, and then the dough down as well. Added some extra flour, and I'm going to do a few more folds where I'm kind of pulling it out from the outside and folding it into the center to get a nice soft dough ball formed. And then I left it covered with a bowl out on the cutting board for 30 minutes. During that time, you want to get your Dutch oven preheated in a 450 degree oven. It must be warm, so that's a good time to put it into the oven so it can come up to temperature. Now it's time to prepare the Dutch oven. So this is a preheated 450 degree Dutch oven. You want to put down some parchment paper, sprinkle a little bit of flour onto that parchment paper, put in your dough ball, sprinkle a little bit more flour on top, and then put it back into the oven and cook for 30 minutes at 450 degrees with the lid on. After that, remove the lid and turn down the oven temperature to 400 degrees Fahrenheit and cook for about another 10 to 15 minutes until it looks like this. Now, you're going to want to place your Dutch oven bread onto a wired rack so it can cool completely. Let's check out this bread. With the strengthening folds, I think that really helped make the bread rise during the cooking process instead of flattening out, so I was impressed with that. Once I got it onto a cutting board, I cut it in half here. You can really hear the crust crunching here, which I thought was great. The exterior was really nice, definitely what you want in a Dutch oven bread, super crispy, crusty. Now let's check out the interior. If I'm being purely honest, the interior wasn't what I was expecting. It wasn't definitely not as airy. Super soft though, as you can see. I can press into it nicely, almost like a sponge. But I was expecting more airiness in the bread, more air pockets, and I think that had to do with one thing. If I could go back and do this again, which I will in a future video, is the dough wasn't wet enough at the end of the day. I needed more hydration in the dough earlier on. I think it was too much flour, and that was kind of the problem here. Still a very solid bread. Can't go wrong with it. Nice soft bread, really crisp outside. I dipped it in some olive oil here. It's delicious. Just next time I would have more hydration in the dough by adding more water. Hope you liked this video. The full recipe will be in the description. Please subscribe for more.